All right, I'm gonna retweet it.
Welcome in. It's a Clippers Talk Live morning after edition. I'm Adam Moslin after the Clippers lost by 22 last night in Denver to the Nuggets. Kind of a disheartening loss after having 4 days off. Was tough to see that. I get it, Clipper Nation. So we brought in a guy that'll do some analysis for you since you already heard from me last night on the post-game show with Carlo Jimenez and with the chat. We got BJ from the Pullup Podcast joining us here on a Clippers Talk Live. And it's a bit of a role reversal because usually he's in the car. Now I'm in the car. I thought I'd swing that on him here. BJ, how we doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. Just joined this Saturday morning. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be outside. I just like being, near a park. The weather's nice. People are going for runs. There's some people walking by, some people on horses here in Burbank. I'm near the LA Equestrian Center. So I thought no better place to do this than in my car. I don't want to be cooped up in the office right now. So I appreciate you doing this. Let's talk about last night's game as people are getting in the chat here. Adam Moslin's dad is here. He said, "Yes, sir." Clippers lose 120 to 98 in Denver to the Nuggets. What are some of your surface level just impressions right off the top here of what went wrong for the Clippers last night?
Third quarter scoring from Denver and the consistency. Think they're 10th in the league in offense. Denver, obviously, we took them 2 games, the first 2 meetings, but I just think that Denver having the full roster and us missing, Jones and T Man, those things are, obviously going to hurt us on the defensive end. And it was a matter of time before Denver caught their groove. And Jokic and Aaron Gordon, I thought at the beginning was very, very good in the post. But I just think they just were able to, get the crowd behind them and, stay consistent. That's really what it was to me.
Yeah, they had that 11-0 run in the third quarter where they really opened things up after the Clippers were up by 5 the first couple minutes of the third. Batum
Yep.
hit those back-to-back three-pointers. It looked like the Clippers were in control. And then Denver said, enough is enough. We have closer to our full squad going. And Jamal Murray had a really good game, not just on
Really.
the offensive end, but defensively. He played well against Norman Powell, against James Harden at times. And I think one of the biggest stories coming out of that one was James Harden going for his season high of 9 turnovers. And
Yeah.
I want to attribute a lot of this, BJ, as I'm trying to be kind here, to a guy who hadn't played in 8 days because he didn't play that game against Houston, obviously, on Sunday,
Yep.
too. Is
Yep.
that how you see it, the sloppiness that we saw from James Harden?
I do, and it's funny you say that. I was listening through the car. I was thinking about that. Like, Harden's the type of player he needs the games under his belt so he does not get rusty. And I think that is why he always wants to play because if he sits out a game or two, you might see what you saw last night. And I mean, obviously, like you said, 9 turnovers, almost his season high, and he just looked out of sync. So Ty Lue sat him. Ty Lue sat Norman Powell, who had 16 points. And when your offense isn't clicking and you got your defenders like Jones and T Man on the not playing, okay, let's pack it in. Let's get ready for Monday.
Is this Clippers team in trouble right now, in bigger trouble than you would have thought? Because I thought they could absorb not having Terrence Mann for some time, but then you lose Derrick Jones Jr. as well. He's a starter. He's been
Mm-hmm.
right there with Chris Dunn as one of their best defenders all season long. Is this more of a precarious position right now for the Clippers than we realize on the defensive end? Because I do think a lot of it was the Clippers' offense hurting their defense with all those turnovers, but you're missing two of your better defenders and a starter in Derrick Jones Jr.
Right.
And you look at the last 5 games now, the Clippers are 20th defensively over that span, over the last 5 games. They're still sixth on the
Six.
season, but
Yep.
you don't want to
Yep.
see too much slippage on that end. And we're starting to see it over the last few games, it feels like.
Yeah. I think Jones will be evaluated in about a couple weeks. T Man will be evaluated in a couple weeks. So those are two big losses, and we already, at the bottom offensively, and like you say, defensively, we can't afford to get bottom there too. And a lot of it just depends on, I think they're kind of, monitoring the Kawhi situation, but yeah, I think the Clippers are a little bit of a truck. They lost 3 straight games. so far against Minnesota, Houston, and now against Denver last night. So with the West being so close and we don't have our key players, I mean, we don't want to fall into hoax. We got Utah again. We beat them the other time, so they're gonna come out trying to beat us on Monday.
And even Chris Dunn wasn't quite right, couldn't play heavy minutes. He asked to come out of the game because he's
Yeah,
coming off going through an illness, being
right.
sick out there. He played through it against Houston, and now he's in high
Mhm.
altitude last night against Denver. So he didn't look like himself. Like he was noticeably gassed and winded out there to a degree
Right.
I hadn't really seen. And for a guy like that, who's an absolute dog, to ask to come out of the game and you could see it, he didn't have his
Mhm.
wind at all. That was a little bit surprising. So a lot was going against the Clippers in that game, but some of it was self-inflicted with that many
Yeah.
turnovers.
Yeah.
19 is a lot. Even though Denver had 22, the Clippers turnovers to me, some of those by James Harden were so avoidable. They were the
Yeah.
type of careless turnovers that you see after maybe I compared it to James Harden and how he looked in the preseason when he was really
Mhm.
turning the ball over a ton and just
Yeah.
was not at all secure with the basketball. It looked like that to me out there last night.
Yeah, we got blown out. I mean, call it what it is. We stayed with them in the first quarter, first half. We were down by I think 1 point, and then we started getting some steam with those two Batum threes in the third quarter, and then they just blew it. It reminded me of the two Houston games, and we haven't really been blown out this season many times because of our defense keeping us at float. But when you take two of our primary defenders off the court, T Man and Derek Jones, and then Chris Dunn is actually dealing with an illness, then we not that great offensively, and we fall to mid to late pack defensively. So yeah, it's a lot that we're dealing with, and a lot of guys want to come in and step up. They put Bones in the second quarter, which I liked, but I just think that with injuries and some people's roles just be changing all around. Yeah, I think that's what we're dealing with right now.
Somebody brought up a stat last night. I thought it was appropriate because
Hmm.
you could kind of see it coming when those two are on the floor. But Bones Highland and KPJ together, when those two are on the floor, they struggle. Their offensive rating is like 95. Their defensive
Hmm.
rating is 130. And that's
Hmm.
in about 60 minutes when those two are together on the floor, regardless of who is next to them.
Wow. Wow.
I just wonder if that's really a formula for success. I know Coach Lou is trying to find something and there are guys out, and maybe you're down big, so you're trying to lean in to get a little bit more juice on the offensive end. You have them, but I don't know. They're too similar in some ways with the way they just pound the ball into the ground, heavy ISO, look for their own. And I thought Kevin Porter Jr. had a nice game last night. But both struggled until, late in the fourth quarter when it was inconsequential time. It was garbage time, basically. Then he knocked down a couple of
Hmm.
three-pointers. What do you make of that two-man tandem? Because a lot of people are coming after Coach Lou and saying, too many smalls, too many guards out there, and two guards in particular, and those two that are heavy ISO players that are always looking for their own.
Yeah, that combo isn't going to work. You're talking about two offensive, like you said, ISO players. Kevin Porter Jr. and James Harden to me is not a great. Well, for Harden, it might help him get off the ball a little bit, which I've seen them trying to actually get Harden off the ball a little bit the last few games with Chris Dunn and KPJ. But Bones and KPJ, nah, they're two defensive. Well, Bones is a defensive liability, and KPJ is solid, but he's so offensive minded, and he's not the most um, highest IQ player that it just results into turnovers. And then you got teams like Denver who runs an efficient offense. They're going to make you pay defensively every single time. So I think Coach Lou is kind of just doing what he can, but I would put another big wing beside a player like KPJ or Bones. I'll put a Jordan Miller. I'll put a Amir Coffey. I'll put a more 6'5" to 6'7" guy that can play off Bones or KPJ. That's what I would do.
It's the Clippers Talk Live the morning after the Clippers lost by 22 in Denver to the Nuggets last night. And it really wasn't even that close from basically the midway point of the third quarter on. They were out in that ball game. Denver got up double digits. They stayed up double digits. And the Clippers just, after having 4 days off and 8 days off in particular for their leader right now and James Harden, too much to overcome. You mentioned Jordan Miller. He struggled last night. Russell
Mhm.
Westbrook ripped him. He was talking some trash to the Clippers bench.
Yeah.
Jordan Miller and his deceleration, long strides, getting to the basket. It was almost a little bit more telegraphed out there, and guys could see it coming, and the defenders were waiting for it. And you wonder how much he's being scouted now that he's been playing a little bit over the last couple of weeks, and how much that's going to change things. And does he need to make an adjustment out there? What have you seen from Jordan Miller? What did you notice last night? Are there any warning signs right now with him? Because I still feel like I need to see more from him. I thought he was solid against Houston. I thought he could have gotten the ball more in that game, but last night he definitely struggled.
Yeah, and that's just expected. This guy, this is his first real getting real minutes in the NBA. Like, you're talking about a guy that came from the G League and now he's getting thrown into the NBA rotation. Like, before the season started, nobody even knew who Jordan Miller was. Nobody actually had no idea until he came to the preseason. So, I mean, you're gonna have games where he's not gonna look as good, but for the most part, what I've seen, he's been pretty poised. He's played hard. He's not really been getting too much rattled. He's had more good games than bad games. So yeah, you need a bigger sample size. It's good to be thrown in, the lake of fire, a little bit to see how what you're made of. And it's not about the game that you do bad; it's how you bounce back. And if he comes out against Utah and shows himself to be, solid, then it's just one bad game. So that's how I look at it.
BJ, your video was cutting out a little bit, but I'm not sure if it's on my side. Chat, let me know. Are you guys hearing BJ okay? I want to make sure we're coming through loud and clear here. Not sure if it was me or if it was on his connection, as I am at a park right now and doing this remotely. Chat, let me know. Are you hearing BJ okay?
Yeah,
Because I thought he was just cutting out for me. But people are talking about this Clippers team in here playing small. If there's issues there, Alfie said Clippers team is small, and no team wins a chip with that kind of formula. You need size. I would point out, I don't think the Boston Celtics have a ton of size when they just won it last season. Porzingis played like a couple of games, and he still isn't the biggest, most imposing guy. He shoots threes. So I don't know if we can say that you have to have size. The Golden State Warriors didn't have huge size when they won championships.
yeah, it's fair. I think you need. I think your defense. I think the defense makes up for that. I think the defense makes up for our size, um, where we don't need a bunch of, offensive weapons. We just really need our, big guy back, and everybody else. I think will follow suit. Once you get your star player back, everybody can fall into their roles and be comfortable. But we all know the defense is legit. We're definitely one of the best defenses in the league.
Well, they're also one of the best rebounding teams in the league. And I have to admit, that's the one thing I never saw coming this season, BJ. Of all the things with this Clippers team that have surprised me, the most surprising thing is that they've been able to be top five, I believe, percentage or right
Hmm.
around. That's
Hmm.
impressive as hell. And that tells you a lot of and you played at a higher level. A lot of rebounding is just about will, determination, and doing the fundamentals, right?
Yeah, it's about that's just what you said. If you can rebound and play defense, you're gonna win 95% of I think Kobe said that. If you rebound and play defense, you're gonna win about 90% of your games if you're able to do that with your team being fully healthy.
And guys, there's more people in the chat now. We'll get to some of your questions here. We got a good one, Leonard from Jeremy Mormon, I want to get to in just a little bit. But we got Pullup Podcast on. I'm in the car this time, not BJ. He's got background going on with
Hey,
Into a
I
Dome.
got a question. I got a
Up.
question for you, Adam. Since you give me a question, I'm gonna ask you a question. What is your 10-man rotation if you have a 10-man rotation so far in the season for the Clippers? What's the rotation that you used to go with? Now, if Kawhi comes back healthy, what would be your 10-man rotation?
All right. So starting line, James Harden, Norman Powell, Eric Jones Jr., Kawhi Leonard, Ivica Zubac. That means Chris Dunn, Terrence Mann, Nico Batum, Amir Coffey. Now I know KPJ's out.
Mm.
I know Jordan, but
Mhm.
tough decisions have to be
Yes.
made. And see them have, I guess, Chris Dunn on ball more with the second unit.
Okay.
Uh, I know. I don't think that this is going to happen because I think KP for Coach Lou. But that reference, I just think he's been too up and down. And I don't know if the basketball IQ is high enough to say that right now he's ready to play winning
Mhm.
basketball
Mhm.
at the highest level.
Mhm.
There have been flashes, and I thought he was solid last night. I thought he was pretty good last night. In fact, they needed what he provided. Defensively, they were stuck in mud at times, and he was out there looking for his shot and creating it. He was going at Peyton
Mhm.
Watson. But after we're 26 games in now,
Mhm.
so how much more do I need to see KPJ, either a guy who's had a season off, and that is what's accounting for maybe the rust, or this is just kind of who he is as a player?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think it's probably the latter, and that's what
Mhm.
concerns me. Um,
Right.
but I totally understand him out there because you need initiators, guys that can do that. I mean, Terrence Mann, who has played plenty of point guard before, between Chris Dunn, who can run the point and get them into their offense some. If you make Ivica Zubac more of a focal point with the second unit and staff, and he's next to guys like that way without having Kevin Porter Jr. in. What say you?
Yeah. I think I mean KPJ's been on losing teams, Cleveland and Houston. He hasn't really been on a winning franchise. So when you go from a team that's not really known for much to a team that's has high expectations, yeah, you're not gonna kind of know what to do in that moment. I don't trust KPJ in a really close playoff series. I don't. Um, he hasn't shown me enough. And from these 26 games, like you said, he's been good some moments, he's been bad some moments, but I can't put him over guys who are proven like T Man, like Derrick Jones Jr., like Chris Dunn. But the problem is that if we're gonna go with that, Harden, is he gonna struggle without another facilitator? Or like you said, you're just gonna put the ball into, T Man's hands and or Chris Dunn's hands and let them help with the point guard facilitation.
That's what I just, as you know what, I'm going to move my car a little bit here, BJ,
Oh
because I
yeah, go
have the
ahead.
capabilities. I'm going to try to move my car and see if I can get a little bit better of a
Go
connection
ahead,
here. I was
man.
saying I got the glow up because the sun's in my eyes, so I just reverse for a second.
So
I want to make sure everybody hear us. I know BJ's connection's fine. It's on my end. Typical. It's
hey,
my
I've
fault.
been I've been in that situation too. It's all good. I already understand.
All right, Clipper. I think that's a really interesting question. How far do you want Kevin? How long do you want to go as your de facto backup point guard when roller coaster? It reminds me too much of Russell Westbrook. And while I appreciate Russ, he's an all-time great. He's a top 75 player ever. For me, he's not my type of point guard because he's too erratic out there. And Kevin Porter Jr., I don't know what's going to happen possession to possession with him either. And I
Mhm.
know their games are different. Russ plays at that fast and furious pace, and Kevin Porter Jr. is more slow, methodical, almost like James Harden light. But I just don't know if, like you said, if you can't trust him in a playoff series right now, and he's never been in one, like I look at this from a long term perspective. What is good for this group and what is going to transfer and translate into the playoffs? I don't know if what Kevin Porter Jr. does is going to be able to do that. So I'd rather just see what else we can do that is more winning basketball in a playoff series.
Yeah, he can't shoot the three. I don't know what's his percentage right now, or like how many shots has he made or take. He can't spread the floor. And in playoffs, and it comes a half court game. Yeah, you can get to your spots. Yeah, you can get to but you can't spread the floor. At a point guard, that's an issue. And like you said, with the turnovers, we already got Harden, who's a high turnover player. We don't need both of our point guards being high turnover. You can't have both of them do the same thing.
Yeah, and turnovers have been the issue all season long from the Clippers. Now, before we get into Kawhi, I will say this. When they get him back, I think that can drastically change how they run their offense and their turnover rate because it's going to take so much of the burden off of James Harden. I think his usage rating is going to drop like 10% by the time
Right.
Kawhi
Right.
Leonard really gets up to speed. But before we get to more on Kawhi, how have you felt about Ivica Zubac as of late? Because he has struggled. They haven't gotten
Mhm.
the ball to him as much. I felt like that game against Houston, they probably should have went to him more. He had 20 plus, 10 boards plus. He was solid out there. And they once again, when Vica Zubac is having big games, they seem to forget about him. But some of it is on him. He hasn't looked as comfortable or as in rhythm the last couple of weeks to me, BJ.
Yeah. It's really just I was talking about this on my show. He don't know when he's gonna get the ball. He don't know when he's gonna get the ball. He doesn't know when he's gonna get the opportunity to score. So since he's not getting the ball consistently, I'm not trying to, give him a way out, but it's affecting him mentally. Like Zubac, the type of person, he has to know what you want from him. Okay, this is your job. We need you to get 10 to 15 shots a night. We need you to get 8 to 10 rebounds a night. We need you to defend the rim. And that has to be consistently going. You can't have him take 15 shots here and then take 5 shots the next game. And you can't have him take 5 shots when he's like 75, 80%, and you refuse to keep giving him the basketball. That's why I think his mindset is, because he's not a hybrid center that can take over. He needs people to give him the basketball. You need people to work with him. So I think his inconsistent play, I think it wavers because he don't know what he's gonna get game by game. Like the Houston game, I think they fed him more because Harden being the primary point guard. Um, a lot of they depend on Harden to give him the ball, but when Harden, I said when he's not on the floor, I see they actually feed Zubac more. I think they have no choice but to dump the ball into Zubac because Harden, he has a system to where he runs the pick and roll. He decides who gets the basketball. So he's not on the court. You got role players that are willing to at least give him the opportunity for the ball, but that should be a game by game emphasis. Like Zubac should be getting 10 to 15 shots a game, easy, and he's shooting the best out the whole team. 60, I think 60%. So I don't know how he does not get the ball enough.
I think that's really poignant because we think of shooters of having to be in rhythm, of having to get touches with their
Mhm.
timing. But it applies to a guy who is using right-handed hook shots, left-handed hook shots, push shots, floaters. He led the league or led centers last season from 5 to 9 feet out. Nobody was better in that area than Ivica Zubac shooting percentage wise. Like
Mhm.
a lot of his game, it is from a little bit further out from the rim, and he has strong post moves. But
Right.
if you're not getting him the basketball frequently enough, how's he going to stay in rhythm? How's he going to be able to know that, okay, he's confident in his shot? He's gotten a few touches here and there over the last couple of minutes. If you just go, long stretches without getting Ivica Zubac the basketball, I do think that is extremely problematic. And that has always bothered me in the 2-1-3 era as well.
Yeah. I mean, check this out. I'm looking at his statistics through the last 5 games. So he had 16 and 13 against Minnesota, 8 for 9 from the field, 88%. He had 8 points and 10 rebounds against the Portland Trailblazers, 50%. Only took 8 shots. 4 points and 10 rebounds against the Timberwolves, took 4 shots, 50%. 21 and 12 against the Houston Rockets, took 15 shots, 60%. And then last night, 13 points and 13 rebounds, 6 for 12 from the field. Like, you're shooting efficient from the ball, you're rebounding the rock, and you're still somehow not getting consistent touches. And when you do get your touches, you're efficient. And what I've learned about big men is if you don't feed the big man, he's not going to be happy. He's not going to run the floor as hard. He's not going to protect the rim. He's not going to be as engaged. So you have to, I think another way to help the team is to feed him and make him happy because he's going to make everybody else's job that much easier. So I think it's more of he's just not consistently getting the basketball. That's why I think it really is.
Rock says Clippers offense is bad process. He's going halves with only 5 shot attempts, but Norman Harden, being as hot as they were, was not going to last.
Exactly.
I do feel like there has been slippage with making Zoo more of a focal point. If you look at their points in the paint to start the year and where they're
Mhm.
at now I want to say they're 13th or 14th in points in the paint, but they started off like top 5 and Zoo was
Yeah.
being fed. And
Yes.
yeah, if you want the dog to protect the house, you got to feed him, as Shaq used to say in the early 2000s with the Lakers. You got to get him involved. I'm not saying Big Zoo is Shaq, but we're not asking for him to get 20 shots up. But can he get 12 plus shots up a game consistently? Can he get his attempts up there for an offense that is struggling? Yet you have a guy that you're not exploiting that can actually get easy buckets for you if you keep him in rhythm, if you keep him warm, keep him involved. I'm
Yeah.
completely with you there. That is something that has always baffled me with this Clippers team. And some of it was early on. Well, Ivica Zubac is still very young. Like, he's 27 now. He's a made
Mhm.
man. He's established in this league. He's had huge games. He's had huge games against Nikola Jokic. And Jokic, by the way, he had 16 points last night. He didn't even
Mhm.
get it going.
Yeah.
And that's Ivica Zubac on the defensive end, which he never gets credit for. He's been a
Never.
top 5 rim protector in this league every single year, year in and year out. And people just ignore that part of it. Or when he doesn't put up big numbers on the offensive end, they think that means he's getting cooked for some reason. Like, it's crazy how people view Ivica Zubac. I always feel like it's a Rorschach test for if you know ball, BJ. If you know ball, you appreciate what Ivica Zubac is able to do. If you
Yeah.
don't, you're a Zoo hater.
You're a Zoo hater. This is what I will blame Zoo for. I would tell the guards, like, give me the ball. Like, I'm 50%, I'm 60%. Like, give me the ball. Like, stop jacking up threes and jacking up shots. Y'all are inefficient. Y'all not scoring the ball, but yet y'all got more shots than me. That's the only thing I would say. Zubac needs to be more assertive and tell them, like, give me the damn ball. Like, they can't stop me. Have that. They paid me that 3-year extra extension. Like, this is I'm a vital piece of this team. I got us to the Western Conference. I was on that team. You know what I mean? So, hey, what's going on? Like, why am I not getting the ball? Tell Ty Lue, give me the ball.
Yeah,
That's what I would say.
it seems like at times because he's not demonstrative about it, you can take his kindness for weakness, right? Like he's too much of a team player, which is great, but sometimes maybe does need to be more demanding with the basketball. I don't think the solution to anything we've talked about is play Trenton Flowers. I got to be honest about that. He's 19. He's played 8 minutes in the NBA so far. I do, I do like his game, but I don't think he's ready, BJ.
I don't think so. I was gonna ask you what you think about him. What you think about his game?
Well, did you hear what Coach Lou said? Did you ask him this question? I forget if you were in the post game presser for this one,
Mm,
but when he actually got run, what was that? The game against Minnesota when they were getting blown out
yeah.
and they were down players and he got called up.
Hmm.
He compared him to Sean Marion, the Matrix. So
Mm.
I'm gonna call Trenton Flowers Matrix Reloaded.
That's a big compliment right there. I like Sean Marion. He was a good player.
He had the quickest second jump that I've ever seen in the NBA. Where that second jump off the floor, he could almost get just as high as the first jump. And the timing of it, that's how he
Mhm.
got that rebound against the Lakers to extend that series into what was that, 2006, where
Yep.
the Lakers blew that 3-1 lead against the Phoenix Suns. And then he got it to
Mhm.
Tim Thomas for that 3-pointer. I think that was Sean
Mhm.
Marion getting the board over Lamar Odom.
It was.
That
It
quick
was.
athleticism there. So he's got hops. Trenton Flowers can get up. He had a crazy contest where he touched like, I don't know, he was 3/4 up the backboard in that game that he played in for the Clippers. I think it was Minnesota. And then he got downhill and got to the basket. But what's interesting is in the G League, he's actually been shooting it really well from three. And that
Right.
seems to be a part of his game. So he can handle the
Right.
rock, he can drive, he can blow by guys, but also he can hit three pointers. Like that's a very valuable player if any of that can project and translate to the NBA level.
No, that's a good point. And Trent Flowers, Jordan Miller, Kobe Brown, Kai Jones. I want to ask which ones you think is ready, NBA ready, and which ones you think are not.
I don't think Kai Jones is ready, and I can say that kind of definitively because we've seen enough of him now at the NBA level. And I don't think he's been awful. Maybe it's not, he's not ready for a team that's competing for something, is how I'll put it. It's not that I think he's awful. On a bad team, I would like to see him get 20 minutes a night and just let him develop, like if he was still in Charlotte. But for this Clippers team right now that has aspirations of making the playoffs, I think Mo Bamba is the better player. I think it's pretty clear. It's not hate towards Kai Jones. Everybody knows I love Sky Jones, but he's just so extremely raw still. And how old is he now? 22 or 23? He's
Mm-hmm.
not 19
22.
anymore, and he's
Right.
still pretty damn raw out there. This was a track and field guy that was trying to adjust to the NBA game. It's hard to do. It's going to take time. So I love him. I think he puts the work in. He just needs more seasoning. Therefore, he probably should be in the G League just getting more reps right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I
I
agree.
guess with who are the other guys you brought up? Trenton Flowers, Jordan Miller, Kobe.
And yep, Kobe Brown.
I just don't know what type of player Kobe Brown is in the league because size wise, is he a four? Is he a small ball five? Well, first of all, he needs to hit three pointers. As Dom McClain has said on this show before, in today's league, if you can't shoot, you can't play. And while there are some exceptions, I think in Kobe Brown's case, that is what's holding him back. He needs to consistently hit from the outside like he did that last season in Mizzou, where he shot 46% from three. If he doesn't shoot 46% from three, he's not getting drafted in the first round. Like, that is the reason the Clippers drafted him. That was it.
Yeah.
Like, if that 3-point shooting can translate with him being kind of well-rounded in a lot of other areas where he feels like a jack of all trades, master of none, but he's a solid passer, he's a solid rebounder. Um, he can get buckets on guys in the post. Like, people talked about him being Draymond Green or some connector like that, but it's like Draymond used to be able to shoot threes consistently on
Yes.
that
Yes.
Golden State Warriors team. He's
Yes.
actually kind of made a comeback in that area as of late. Like,
Yes.
you have to be able to spread the floor if you're Kobe Brown. That to me is what's holding him back.
Yeah. I like Kobe Brown because I think the 3-point shooting it has nothing to do. He can't shoot like you just mentioned. Heck, with Mizzou, he was like 46%, but he don't have. He's a mature younger player. 4 years in Mizzou. He plays hard. He plays tough. He's athletic. He's strong. He has like kind of a game where I think he can match with the half court game with Kawhi and Harden and those type of players. So if it's just really just knocking down 3-point shots, I would just really let him get reps in because I'm looking for guys that are going to be able to hold it down against the big dogs in the playoffs. And I think if you allow Kobe Brown to play and get those reps and get opportunities to play, I think that we can actually see the development grow. KPJ is a player like we just talked about. I just think that he is who he is. He's played losing basketball with losing teams, but he's gotten a long leash. I think they pulled Kobe Brown's leash a little too soon last year. I think they need to put him back kind of in the rotation.
It's a tough situation with this Clippers team because last year they obviously were in win now mode when you bring in James Harden. You're trying to compete for a championship. How do you get young guys involved? He got that 10-game look. I thought he was better by the end of it. But since then, even in summer league at times he was up and down,
Mhm.
preseason up and down. I think if he showed more then at the lower level, that would have helped build his case for getting more minutes out there. But it's a minutes crunch. It's a numbers game with these guys, and the Clippers are trying to win ball games, and their margin for error is pretty small. So you got to play the guys that you think are going to be more consistent and give you the better chance to win. So I understand why they're not playing him as much. I agree with you. If he got consistent minutes somewhere, I think that 3-point shooting could come around. He needs to catch a rhythm. he needs to actually get more attempts up because I watch him all the time pregame. Like he can shoot it. Now, he didn't shoot it well though last year in the G League. I think he only shot 34% from three. So that's something else going against him. It's like you got to prove it at the lower levels before you have a chance to do it at the NBA level, right? Like if
Yeah,
he's not performing in the G League, how's he going to perform here?
yeah. It's and what Ty Lue say that no one's spot is safe coming into the league, or into the team. Nobody's spot is safe. I think it's probably another opportunity to kind of adjust the roster a little bit because I think guys are somewhat getting a little bit exposed. Now I want to ask about Amir Coffey. How you think he's been playing?
Say that again, BJ.
I wanted to ask what part you didn't hear.
That last part.
What you think about Amir Coffey?
Last night?
Well, last 5 games. What you think about
Last
how he's
night
been?
he's well, I'm an Amir Coffey fan. I think he's having a really good season. He's been struggling late from three, and he needs that shot. But overall, this season, I think he's still over 40% from the outside. Like
Hmm.
that's something I actually think can hold up with Amir Coffey because he's had last season he shot 38% from three the entire year. He's had a season on low volume where he shot 41% from three. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Amir Coffey can shoot over 40% from three on the season. I think Amir
Hmm.
Coffey, for the most part, has been very good. I'm trying to think. Have you been calling him one of the better two-way players on this team?
Yeah, I think he's the best one next to Kawhi. Um, those players got to be on the court. And see, I didn't know what took Ty so long to play him. Maybe because he was behind Kawhi and Paul George in the rotation, but I don't think two-way players should be anywhere off the floor. I think they need to be on the court at all times, or give them a good amount of rotation because they can't be played off the court. They can defend and they can score. Like he's averaging 10 points per game this year. I think he's shooting 47% from the field, and he's showing he's putting time in the gym. He's had starter times where he started, so he deserves to be in that rotation consistently. His minutes should not be going up and down. They shouldn't be go all around. They should be consistently 20 to 25 minutes at least. And then in games where he's playing very well, you can put him in 30 minutes.
I think he's gotten a big leash so far this season where he's closed out a lot of games. When he plays well, they leave him in. And I have appreciated that from Coach Lou because he's having his best season so far, easily. This is Amir Coffey's year so far. He's playing great. He's in my 10-man rotation. The guys who are out that could be controversial for some are KPJ, Bones, and Jordan Miller. I do want Jordan Miller to get more minutes, though. When you brought up the young guys and who do you think is an NBA player or can play right now, I still think Jordan Miller is one of those guys, even after having a bad game last night. Like he's coming off the last couple of weeks. Jordan Miller has had 12 points against Houston, where I thought he should have got the ball more. Where in the
Yeah.
second half, they brought him in. He didn't touch the ball. I want to say he didn't even touch it when they brought him back in the third quarter for about 3 minutes. Like nobody was giving him the basketball. But he's had games of 14 points, 15 points recently. I'm not going to overreact to what happened last night with Russell Westbrook playing well against him defensively and mean mugging the Clippers bench and saying that, oh, okay, Jordan Miller maybe isn't him. Jordan Miller to me is him. Like he has, even though, yes, the scouting report may be out on what he likes to do with getting downhill, I've seen him go at Aaron Gordon recently. Not last night,
Yeah.
but the game
Yeah.
before that, he went at Aaron Gordon twice for layups. And then the Houston game last Sunday, this was the play of the season so far from Jordan Miller to me. He gets blocked by Jabari Smith Jr. in the second quarter, gets the ball back on the rebound after Jabari Smith Jr. blocks him and goes right back after him, right? He
Yeah.
goes right back at him for a layup. To
Yeah.
do that as a young player in this league against one of the better defenders, that said a lot to me about who Jordan Miller is.
Yeah. Jordan Miller's he has a poise. He has a quiet. Certain guys on the team they make certain things tick about them. Jordan Miller is a quiet killer to me. I think that he doesn't really do a bunch of barking and talking, but his game does it for him. and I think that's a person that you can really rely on. But something about Bones, I don't mean to switch gears, but Bones, you saw how him and Dylan Brooks got into it against the Rockets the other night.
Yeah,
I
Bones
feel
got some edge.
you gotta. I feel like you gotta poke Bones to like wake him up. Like he can be just chilling, but then when you say something to him, like I think that's what kind of gets him going, like that playground mentality. Like grew up playing with guys older than him, grew up playing on the blacktop. Those type of players, you have to kind of poke them to wake them up. I think that's what type of player Bones is.
I just, at this point in his NBA career, he has to be more consistent, and he needs more consistent minutes to prove that. I totally understand, but I think he's on the outs overall with the Clippers, and it's going to be somewhere else where Bones is going to have to go and thrive. I think he can
Right.
be a backup point guard in this league, an instant offense guy, but when you're that small and can be picked on, in today's league, you talk about two-way players and how important they are. It's because in today's league, your flaws get exploited more than ever. They will matchup hunt you to death in
Mm-hmm.
today's NBA.
Yep.
That's the difference to me. So when you have a guy that small in Bones Highland, if he's out there and he's not hitting threes like he wasn't till the very end of the game last night when the game was already over, I just don't know what he provides.
Um, instant offense.
But it
Now
wasn't
when
instant. Like he's missing shots. Like he came in the game
last
early and
night,
was missing.
I'm about the what about the Houston game?
He was better. I thought that was probably one of his better
Minnesota.
games, but it's not consistent. That's the problem. Like if he always was coming out there and giving you 15 points and was always on the verge of catching that heater like we used to see with Lou Williams when he came off the bench, like
Yeah.
guys like that, that's instant offense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you on that. So you think Bones is gonna be off the team by trade deadline?
I think before the official trade deadline, I think maybe the December 15th.
Oh
Today's the
man.
14th, tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's getting traded tomorrow. I'm saying when those contracts open up to be traded, when a lot of teams are going to be making moves, the Lakers are probably going to get Jonas Valanciunas or something. There's a better chance that PJ Tucker and Bones Highland get moved then. I just think you have to move two guys for one so you open up a contract so you can convert Jordan Miller's two-way contract to a standard contract because I think they need him on a standard.
So what do you think we need? Do you think we need to make a big trade? What you think the Clippers need to do?
I don't think they should make a big trade. And we can transition this into talking about Kawhi Leonard because to me, before you trade off any valuable assets, whether it's a first round pick or young players or anyone on this roster outside of Bones and PJ, you got to see how Kawhi looks. You got to see if he can actually stay healthy. Like, how can you say we need to make a move to become a championship team when the guy that makes you a championship team, his health is up in the air? Like, it doesn't matter if you make a big move right now. If Kawhi can't stay healthy, he's
Yeah.
the one that's going to put you over the top. I don't care if you bring in Zach LaVine. I don't care if you brought in Jimmy Butler. If Kawhi can't stay healthy,
It
you're
don't
not
matter.
going to win a championship. So wait to see how he looks.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all on him. It's all on Kawhi. Um, I think it's a tough spot for Clippers management too, because they're looking. If we thinking about it, just think about what they're thinking about. All right, so if our big guy can't stay healthy for a whole season, or he can't get to the playoffs, do we just rebuild? Do we retool? Do we, have to, get rid of Kawhi? Like, what do we need to do? If he does stay healthy, then we're fine. Like, which we want to actually do. So let's go with if he does stay healthy. Do you think we need to make any moves after, or do you think that we need to fine tune the roster a little bit?
If he does stay healthy, and let's say he comes back the end of this month and he plays consistently all the way through January to where the trade deadline is in February, and he doesn't play back to backs, but he's consistently available outside of that, well, then at least you can figure out where your flaws are. We got Kawhi back. He's playing consistently. How do we look at all these other areas? and then how do we fill the void where there's a flaw? That's what I think would be the smartest way to go about it. And then you still have to weigh how much are you willing to give up of your future because you think you might have a chance this season once again, and you're banking on Kawhi continuing to play like that. It's not like he didn't play great for the first 4 months of the season or whatever it was last year before the knee started to swell up. They had a pretty healthy sample of Kawhi looks awesome. Second year coming back off the ACL. This is it. Here we go. That's why he got the contract extension, because he looked absolutely incredible. And
Yeah.
all the signs were positive that he was going to stay healthy, but then he didn't. Then, right before the playoffs, 3 weeks before, the knee swells up. It's so unfortunate. But I'll say this about what the front office has been able to do and what their plan is. I think they've done a great job of having the option of being a contender this season while also having the flexibility, if they're not, to have maybe a big sell off because they have contracts that are very much tradable. They could
Mm,
trade Terrence Mann if they wanted to. They could trade James Harden before the trade deadline. He's on a 1+1. He can opt out after this season. You could move him. They're under the first apron. Like, I think they have played this the right way where they have, a Doctor Strange level of all these different scenarios that they can see in front of them that are possible. And it's all because Paul George wasn't brought back. So they're under the first apron and they have a ton of
mhm.
flexibility with cap space and what they can do.
I agree. I agree. Let me ask you the question then. So this is the big elephant in the room. How far do we go with no Kawhi Leonard this season? If we have to deal with Kawhi being in and out the rotation, and let's God forbid we want him healthy, but we have to look at both sides. If he is on the court and he finishes the whole season and the playoffs, and if he's not on the court, what are the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard for an entire season and in the postseason?
Without him for the entire year, I think they're eighth, ninth, or 10th. I think they're still a play-in team, but they're at the bottom of the play-in. They're probably not seventh or eighth, eighth at best in the West. Only because I know people are saying, Adam, we're 2 games over 500. What do you mean? We can be a top 6 seed even without Kawhi Leonard. Well, they got 17 games coming up in March. Like, the schedule, as much as things have led up as of late, where they're playing 2 games in 10 days, the schedule does ramp back up right before the playoffs. And that's going to take its toll on this team. And as the season goes along, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep James Harden fresh enough to hold up this squad. And I think they're going to slip down the standings some, especially in a Western Conference that is just far too competitive. There may not be enough of those upper echelon teams like in the East where you can say OKC is extremely dangerous. They're close to a zero flaws team in the West. But outside of that, there are a lot of teams with flaws, but they're still very good. They're just
Hmm.
not great elite. So considering that, without Kawhi, yeah, I think they're at the bottom of the play-in, and that's a scary place to be.
So, what teams do you feel like in the playoffs going in with Kawhi we are good matchups for, and which one are bad matchups with Kawhi healthy on the team? Because I got a few teams that I think can kind of give us a hard time in the playoffs.
Well, I'm like you. If they have Kawhi in the playoffs, there aren't many teams I fear. Even the OKC Thunder, I think they have a shot against, a real shot against, because they might have the best player in that series. Kawhi could outplay SGA. I could totally see that happening if he's right, if he's healthy, if he comes back and he's the version of Kawhi we saw last season before the knee swelled up. I think they're the team I would fear most. Second most would be the Denver Nuggets, just because Jokic is a monster. And Jamal Murray in a playoff series seems to be a different animal, but he still hasn't looked quite right. And he had
Yeah.
ACL a couple of years ago. Their depth isn't there. I think Russell Westbrook likely hurts them in a playoff series, but I still would put Denver as the second toughest team. After that, I feel good about Dallas. I feel good about Phoenix.
Hmm.
Uh, I feel decent against. I don't know if they played the Lakers. I wouldn't love that matchup, but I don't even know if the Lakers are going to be in that situation with the way things are
Yeah,
going
Lakers
right
are
now. Who
done.
knows?
They're
But
done. They're done.
there's a lot to be determined. I think Houston in a 7-game series, they don't scare me, BJ. I got to be honest. I know they're 3-0 so far against the Clippers. Their best player doesn't average 20 points per game. Who's their best player? In a 7-game series, the Clippers likely have the two best players against Houston with Kawhi and Harden.
See, now Houston, I think gives us problems because I don't think Harden's going to be much of a factor in that series, and I'm gonna tell you why. If you watch how, and I know Kawhi ain't on the court, but if you watch how Harden plays against Houston, our first few meetings, the first two meetings, they really pressured him with the basketball, like putting what's his name, Amon Thompson on the point of attack. That seems to really, really bother James Harden on the point of attack. Now I don't know if he's gonna guard Kawhi in the series, but I think it's harder for James Harden to play against a young, athletic, long team like Houston against them. And then we saw them against Houston the other night in LA. It was a much more competitive game where you had more ball movement, where they used Zubac in the post more. That game went down closer to the wire, and that was when Harden didn't play. And now I think a guy like Kawhi, he is who he is. He's going to be the best player in that series. But I think the defensive scheming that Houston, I think they're top three in defense, and they got some good offensive players and have one of the better coaches in the league. They're going to come in that series prepared against a team like I think the Clippers, where it's going to be a dog series. We'll have the best player, but I think that series goes 6 or 7 games.
It's fair because the Clippers have lost to them 3 times. I just think, as much as I like Ime Udoka, the Clippers have the best player by a wide margin in that series. Unless Jalen Green makes some leap before now and the end of the season, his efficiency is down. Fred VanVleet's efficiency is down.
Mhm.
People are talking about Şengün. They can't spell it, but they're talking about him. He's only averaging 13 points per game in their 3 games against the Clippers so far. Şengün has not been much of a problem. I got this guy who's always telling me that Ivica Zubac is getting destroyed by Şengün. It's like, how? The guy averages 19 points per game on the season, but only 13 in 3 games against the Clippers so far. They've neutralized him. I think they're good. You might be right. The series could be, I'm not saying it's going 5 games, but I'd feel good about the Clippers winning that series, I guess, in 6 games. I'm talking about relative to the rest of the matchups in the Western Conference. I feel better about Houston versus a team like Dallas, where you have to deal with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and top end talent like that. The Houston Rockets just
Mhm.
don't have the top end talent to me.
Mm,
But I
that's
hear what you're
fair.
saying.
That's fair.
How do you feel about what I said about OKC and Denver? And I didn't bring up Minnesota, who's probably the third best team to me in the West.
Mhm.
And even though they're just starting to get it together and defensively they're getting back to their, trademark, or they're getting back to their principles on that end, how do you view the top of the Western Conference and how the Clippers would match up with Kawhi?
You talking about OKC and Denver? How they would match up?
Yeah, and I'll throw Minnesota in there too because I think they're dangerous.
Uh, I think OKC, we can beat them. I and this may be an unpopular take. I think OKC has proven to be a regular season team. They haven't proven to be a playoff team. I think the additions of Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hardenstein definitely can put them in that category. Um, I think they will give us trouble just based off of with the place they are right now in the league, as far as being a young, talented team, and they try to actually create their depth and fill out their roster. I think they are going to be a team that's going to be forced to reckon with, but I think we still can beat them just based off of we have the better player that I think can, up rail them over OKC, which hasn't really proved anything in the playoffs. Denver, I would look at Denver as a more scarier team than OKC because you got arguably the best player in the league, and that's Nikola
I
Jokic.
don't think it's arguably. I don't think it's arguably.
You don't think
To me,
so?
You tell me this. If you got 3 of the last 4 regular season MVPs and a finals MVP, that's definitive to me. You're the best player in the league.
Yeah, Jokic grew on me, man. I used to not like that guy, but he has really grown on me because he makes his teammates better. I think he defensively he's a little bit underrated. He's not as bad as people make him out to be. I know he's slow, he can't jump, but he has great hands. He's great with his positioning. He tries to play on defense. He just doesn't have that physical capabilities, but he does everything. He scores, he rebounds, he assists, he's a floor like he does everything for your team. He's a floor raiser. But as far as the best player, yeah, we can just say that. You go into
Who
any
would you put? Who would you put above him or in the conversation with him as the best player?
SGA.
I think SGA might win the MVP this season.
Yeah, I thought he should have won it last year. I mean, but it can go either way. I mean, Giannis. I think Giannis is the most dominant. I don't think he's the best because his skill set, but I think he's the most dominant two way. You could put him in that discussion. I think Kawhi, healthy, is better than all of them. Um, that's
Okay,
just
here's why I don't understand. People said this was Shaq all the time. The MDE, the most dominant ever. If you're the most dominant, how are you not the best? What does that mean?
dominant is simply just brute force. But Shaq had weaknesses.
Okay.
He had holes in his game. You got holes in your game, you're not a complete player. That's why I think Kobe on the team was the complete player, and then Shaq was most dominant. Because when you're missing free throws in the stretch, like that's a big hole in your game.
I like the way you put that. Dominant as in brute force. I get that.
Yeah, but as far as Denver, I think they're even more scared than OKC. And I think I'm not scared of Minnesota, man. I'm not with Kawhi. I'm not scared of Minnesota.
I'm not as scared as them as I was last season with Karl Anthony Towns because he kind of flipped the narrative last year. Coming into the playoffs, everybody said Cat is a playoff lowerer. He doesn't meet the moment. But they don't win against Denver without Karl Anthony Towns and the way he played in that series, and specifically his defense against Jokic, too. Like just having another big out there that can stretch the floor. I do think at first I thought maybe it could be addition by subtraction because Naz Reid would get more minutes with Cat off the team and in New York now. But I think at this point, it's safe to say Minnesota lost that trade with New York.
Mm, I thought the Knicks kind of got worse. I'm not saying I think Cat's playing better than Randall, but as far as a team, I think the Knicks went down, and I think the Timberwolves
But
went
people don't
down,
talk about the Knicks losing Hartenstein. Like that is outside of the trade
and
with Cat.
even DiVincenzo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I don't.
that's
I thought the
yeah.
Knicks should have kept their team.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fair. But you don't fear Minnesota. I don't fear them as much as last season. When do you expect Kawhi Leonard to be back? Give me a date, BJ.
December 27th, or I don't know. They play the following week, but it's going to either be late December or early January. I don't see him waiting longer than that.
I agree with you. I kind of said I'd be surprised if he didn't return by late December, but if there's a setback, that changes things. If there's a setback, all bets are off. Hopefully, there isn't one. And this week was obviously progress because he practiced in back to back days. I didn't
Yeah.
think he was going to do that. I figured they
Uh-huh.
gave him a day off after he came back and practiced that first one, and he went full speed. So, no contact, but he was at least running as hard. As somebody who has been through the grind and been through practices, like, was that meaningful to you that he did practice at least at full speed?
Of course, it's showing that his he's right there. I mean, what you think about what Bill Simmons said about him being back for Christmas? What you think about that statement he made?
I think it was a hot take to get attention. I think he was looking for some attention. Although the way he said it, it was almost a throwaway line. Like he just dropped it in there out of nowhere, kind of in that
Yeah.
conversation on the Ringer. I don't think Bill Simmons, having built a Clippers inside source before. I've never known him to be that guy, but he
Mhm.
says that he has a Clippers guy, and that guy told him that Kawhi Leonard will be back before Christmas. If he's back before Christmas, it's not going to be, I don't think, Monday night for his bobblehead night. That's too soon. He has to get in contact practice first. And
Right.
to our knowledge, he hasn't done that yet. He didn't travel with them last night to Denver. So I think at best, my guess would be the second game in Dallas next Saturday. So a week from today is best case scenario for Kawhi returning. I don't think he could come back any sooner than that, and that
Mhm.
still would be asking a lot, probably.
Yeah, I think they're kind of waiting to see how they play these next few games too. Like if we start winning, the more wins we get, the more cushion we get. The less we're starting to, win, the less cushion we get. And with guys being out, I think also it's like, hey, we might need to bring him back sooner or later. So I think it's kind of a wait and see game.
I mean, I still don't think there's any situation where they would rush him back. But I do want to ask you this question as we close things out here. I thought this was good. This was from Jeremy Mormon earlier. He said,
You said
with
Mormon.
the imminent return of Kawhi Leonard, do you think the mindset has changed with the players from we can beat anyone to we'll be good when Kawhi is back? Do you think they have taken their foot off the gas at all because they know Kawhi's return is around the corner?
No, I don't think. I don't think Jeff Van Gundy is the type of person to quote unquote allow that to happen. I don't think that Ty Lue would allow that to happen. Kawhi isn't back yet. And from what we heard from the players, Amir Coffey, Jordan Miller, and they don't know when like Kawhi is private. So they don't know when he's coming back. They have the idea and they've heard the murmurs, but I don't think they're looking at like, oh, Kawhi's gonna be back. We gotta no, I don't think that's how they operate. I just think it's been injuries. We've been seeing like we had Derek Jones, Kevin Porter Jr., James Harden, Amir Coffey, Terrence Mann, like all these guys have been getting hurt one after another. So they've been dealing with that more so than they just taking their foot off the gas.
I agree with you. The intensity of Jeff and the way they have had a sense of urgency all season long so far, I don't think that's going to change. I think they've just had some bad games and some unfortunate luck with rotations and availability with guys as of late that has thrown off their rhythm a little bit. And that's why they've lost three in a row. They also were facing good competition: Minnesota, Houston, the Denver Nuggets. I'm not going to put too much into that. I'm going to see how they respond Monday night against the Utah Jazz. If they come out and are all gas, no brakes against Utah and handle their business, I'm going to feel much better about this Clippers team. I think that's what we're going to see Monday night. I hope, because tell me if I'm wrong about this. Utah's roster is not as bad as their record reflects. They should
Mm.
not be this bad this season. Marketing should not be this bad.
Yeah, marketing, John Collins, Keontae George, Colin Sexton, Walker
Clarkson,
Kessler. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I mean they got some good rotational guys that's been there for a couple of seasons. I think it's honestly it might be their I don't want to say they're coaching, but I don't know if he has a I don't know if he has a command enough of the team where they really know what their identity is. Like
mm,
I don't know if that might be the case because they got, like you said, they got some good pieces on that team. So I just don't know if the coach has enough of command on the squad for them to believe that they believe like they should be playing for something bigger. I don't know that might be the case.
Last thing here, I think that's really interesting. I think the Clippers have gotten by on knowing who they are more so each and every night than their opponent. They came in with a plan. They knew they were going to be a great defensive team. They have Jeff Van Gundy, and that has given them kind of an inside track to starting off this season as well as they have. You agree with that?
That's a bet. That is a great point. They said it. They have a guy who they believe that can do it. He's done it in the past, Jeff Van Gundy. And when you got that amount of leadership, you're going to follow, especially if it's a lot of players who are kind of like itching to prove themselves. Like Norman Powell wanted to prove himself, James Harden wanted to prove himself, Ivica Zubac, Derrick Jones Jr. wanted to guard the best player every night. You got guys that really want to play, Chris Dunn. So yeah, that is a great point.
Guys, I get it. You can think Utah is tanking. I don't think the guys out there on the court care about that. I think those guys want to play hard. There can be institutional tanking where you don't put out the right combinations of players, where guys could be sitting out games, but I don't know if that's been it so far for the Utah Jazz. It has
They're
just been
not tanking.
strange that it hasn't come together when they have more talent than their record would indicate. So that could be a tougher game than I originally thought on Monday night. He is BJ from the Pull Up Podcast. BJ, where can everybody find you? How can they get to you? When's your next show coming?
I so like first of all, thank you to Adam for having me on the show again. Great show, Clipper Talk. Y'all subscribe to his page, subscribe to on Twitter as well. Great interviews, great hospitality from him. You can find me on YouTube, the Pull Up Basketball Podcast. I'll be doing a show in the next 20 minutes. So I got a show on, the Clippers last night. You can find me on Instagram, the Pull Up Basketball Podcast, and Twitter X. You can find me the Pull Up Shows. You guys can find me on different platforms on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, and iHeartRadio as well. So thank you, Adam, for the kind hospitality as always.
Thank you for the great analysis, as always, my friend. For BJ from the Pull Up Podcast, I'm Adam Osland. This has been another episode of Clippers Talk.
Peace.
We out of here like swimwear.